All right, so welcome back. Let's jump into the seven trumpets. Here we go. Chapter 8, verse 6. And the seven angels that had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. The first angel sounded, and there followed hail and fire mingled with blood. They were cast upon the earth, and the third part of the trees was burnt up, and all the green grass was burnt up. Where else do we remember hail and fire mingled with blood? Anybody have a recollection of that anyplace else in Scripture?
Was it in Egypt? Some of the plagues there? Is that...
Yep, with Moses. That's exactly it. So one of the reasons I'm pointing that out is because we're going to read about two witnesses. And we'll talk about them more when we get there. But there are two witnesses who are alive and who are prophesying during the time of the beast. Now, we don't know exactly when they begin their ministry, but we know that they prophesy for 1,260 days. We know that that the beast hates them, that they're alive during the days of the beast, and that the beast kills them. Their lives are ended when God finally allows the beast to kill them. So we know that they start their ministry a little earlier than the beast, at least a little earlier than the beast. We don't know how much earlier, but they do start before the beast comes into power, because the beast kills them before he goes out of power, and the beast is also given 1,260 days. So you see what I'm saying? So if they both started at the same time, the beast would kill them the day that he went out of power, and that doesn't seem to be what Scripture states. So what appears to happen is that the two witnesses that are prophets of God, that are testifying of God to the world, that they are around before the beast comes into power, and that they are in power while the beast is here, and that they're killed during the beast kingdom. All right. The reason I mention them is because the three possibilities that we know of in Scripture for the two witnesses are Moses, Elijah, and Enoch. Those are the only three people. We know that Enoch and Elijah never died. Scripture says that Elijah was taken in a whirlwind of fire. Enoch, it says that Enoch was no more because the Lord took him. And then Moses, the one about Moses that's kind of a strange one, is in the New Testament, there is a scripture that discusses the body of Moses. And specifically, it says that Satan battled for the body of Moses. And when we look at the Old Testament account of Moses' burial, Scripture says that God buried Moses. So there's just kind of this question about, when did God bury him? When was he buried? We don't know when. We don't know how. We don't know, when the word, does the word buried literally mean buried in the ground? Does it mean enclosed somehow? We don't know. And why would there be a battle for the body of Moses? Why would Satan want it so badly? So there's a little bit of ambiguity that floats around what happened to Moses, how the Lord took care of him, what happened to him at the end of his life. And when we look at the trumpets, you're going to see some similarities. And I wonder if some of the things that we're seeing here as the trumpets, when heaven is interacting with earth, if these are at the request or at the command of the two prophets of God. Like this one here, Scripture does not say this. This is a Buckism, just I'm telling you. But I wonder if what we're seeing on the first trumpet is that the two witnesses are here. Is one of them Moses? And if so, is he doing the same thing that he did when he was in Egypt? And is it just that heaven is now performing the task that Moses is requesting, right? So just a thought I'm throwing out for you to chew on. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying I think it's worth thinking about.
One thing I might kind of add to that, one thought I've always had is, it does say in Scripture that it's appointed for man to die once. And who are the two people that haven't ever died? Enoch and Elijah. And so those two witnesses do die at the end of it. That's kind of the way my brain's always gone on that.
Sure, yeah. And what I'm saying with Moses is we don't know when he dies. That's really what I'm saying, is that there's ambiguity. Scripture says
Right,
that God buries him, but we don't know when or where. And is it that God does bury him, or that God encapsulates him or holds him in such a way that he's able to come and be used during that time and ultimately die, like you're saying in Romans, it talks about that. That's appointed unto man once to die. And we know that there are people that were brought back to life, not resurrected, but were raised from the dead, right? There's the son of the widow of Nain. There's the daughter of the Roman centurion. There's Lazarus. They all came back to life because God put life back in their bodies. They didn't receive a resurrected body, though. And so I'm just wondering, and I don't know, right? I don't know. But I haven't been able, those are the only three people that I've ever been able to, Moses or Elijah and Enoch for sure. And then Moses is just kind of a question mark. So,
right. But that's a great point, because I was thinking the same thing. I wasn't sure exactly how I would connect it all, but Enoch and Elijah.
It could be.
Both ascended, or whatever you would want to call it. Kind of interesting.
It is. Oh, I know. And we'll find out. I mean, likely, if it happens in our lifetime, we will, right? Okay. Okay, so here we go. Here's where we get into percentages. So the first angel sounded, there followed hail mingled with fire. They were cast upon the earth. The third part of the trees was burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. So think about this. Think about collateral damage now, guys. We don't want to walk through these scriptures and just take them at face value. Let's think about the repercussions, right? If we lose a third of the trees and all green grass, what effect does that have? So certainly it's going to affect the price of beef globally, any kind of meat, because what's going to happen is the people who are hurting won't have anything to feed. Because they won't have any way to graze, they'll have to only keep the cattle, sheep, goats, whatever alive that they can, based on what they can feed, which would be something in storage, hay, straw, silage, whatever, grain, which means that they're going to severely depopulate and sell off their meat, because they either sell it and get something for it, or they burn it and they kill it. So likely what's going to happen is there's going to be a massive flood of meat into the global economy. And then 9 months or a year later, there's going to be so little meat that the packing plants that have been able to freeze it are going to be selling it for $100 a pound or whatever they're going to get for it, because there's only going to be these small herds that were able to be maintained with whatever they had in storage so that they can begin repopulating their herds. Now, we've seen similar circumstances to this already in the United States. So that's just one. Ecologically, a third of the trees and all the grass, what are the main producers of oxygen in the world? Not just the United States, but in the world, right? Trees and grass, plants. I mean, anything that goes through photosynthesis takes in carbon dioxide and expels oxygen. So if we lose a third of our trees and we lose all of our grass, that's going to affect something. What's that?
I'm just saying, what was the ratio of the angels that fell with Lucifer?
Well, in Revelation 12, it's the only verse that we have, so we don't know if that's really what it's saying, but it seems to be what it's saying, that a third of the angels defected. Yeah, a third of the angels defected with Satan.
I know. I'm just saying it's interesting that it's a third, not 22%, not 38%. It's a third. A third, and a third, and a third.
So here we have a third, and we're going to see a third more. Here we have a third and all. So we've got 33% and 100% on that one, right? But also notice that by the time we get to Revelation 9, chapter 9, verse 4, we've got grass again. So just kind of keep that in mind. Here in about 9-10 verses, the grass is going to be back So this kind of also gives you a sense of how much time is happening between here, right? Verse 8, the second angel sounded, and as it were, a great mountain burning with fire was cast into the sea, and a third part of the sea became blood, and the third part of the creatures which were in the sea and had life died, and the third part of the ships were destroyed. So I went to the one for me, this one, the one that was the defining piece for me on this one. I went researching to look and see the shipping lanes. So if you were to Google online shipping tracker, you could find a website that shows you every ship in the world, where it's at, the kind of cargo that it's carrying, how many containers it holds. It'll tell you where it's at in the middle of the ocean or elsewhere. When the cargo ships were stacked up on top of each other outside of Los Angeles, and we had 150, 160 cargo ships waiting to get unloaded during COVID. I was watching during that time, and I was watching all the ships to see what they were doing. And it was so interesting because they could not get in to unload. And so they were literally sailing down to the coast of Mexico to be in warmer waters, because they had to wait 2-3 months to be able to get unloaded. So they're living off the coast of Mexico for this extended period of time in warm water, waiting for their slot to open up in LA. So it's there, and you can get it if you want to. But one of the reasons I was interested in that site was because I was curious to look at all of the shipping traffic in the world, and you can see it all there. And if you look at all the shipping traffic in the world, and you look for a place where a mountain could fall into the ocean and destroy a third part of the ships, it's only possible one place. One. Anybody take a guess?
Long Beach.
Close. That's the right direction.
New Orleans.
It's the Pacific Ocean. That's the only body of water that could take out at least 33%. So more than 33% of our shipping happens in the Pacific Ocean. The rest of the oceans of the world take the other 60+%, 60-ish% of the shipping traffic is divided amongst the other oceans and seas of the world. But at any given point, more than 33%, anywhere from 38 to 42%, of the shipping that happens globally happens between the west coast of America and the east coast of Asia. That is the one place where a great mountain burning with fire, being cast into the sea, could take out a third part of the ships. Now, would that take out a third part of the creatures as well? I don't know. But it's the one place that I know it can take out a third part of the ships. There's not another place on the face of the earth where a single object like a mountain burning could take out a third part of the ships. There's just not enough traffic anyplace else. So having said that, think about the collateral damage again. If you have something that's large enough to take out a third of the ships, hit a body of water like the Pacific Ocean, what has to be actionable after that? You've got tsunami, you've got, tidal wave, however it hits, whatever part of the world you are, right? So you've got tidal waves that end up happening, coastal geography destroyed. Would it be enough to actually reach all the way to the west coast of the United States? Quite possibly, if it's enough to take out a third of the ships. I don't know. Depends on where it hits, right? So just something to think about. Pacific Ocean, that's the only thing that I could find that would satisfy the scripture. Verse 10, the third angel sounded, there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Now, many of you on the call today may have actually tasted wormwood and not even realized it. If you've ever tasted, my mind absolutely went blank. Give me a second. Tonic water that's used in drinks. Tonic water, right? It's kind of a bitter water. What makes tonic water bitter is wormwood. So you kind of get a sense of what happened to the waters. The interesting part here is that it says that the star fell burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the river. So that means it must have been coming down as a chunk and then divided, because it says that I saw a star and it fell upon the third part of the rivers. So it can't be that it fell here, because it'd have to bounce around like a foosball or something like that to get from river to river to river to do it. So it must have come down and then divided somehow if it fell on a third part of the rivers. And so here is a dream that I had. I'll offer it as only as a thought, and you can take it and do what you want to with it. But I was standing out in front of my house looking to the east, and I saw, it was like I could tell the distance where I was at. I was in Oklahoma, but I was looking at the east, and I saw these rockets come like this. And I went boom, 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 like in a row, boom, boom, boom. And there were, I think, 12 of them. And I knew somehow in this dream that that the bombs had landed on the Mississippi River, that the Mississippi River had been bombed. And this is an interesting part. These and this is before I knew the scripture in Joel about the pillars of smoke. But these bombs were atomic. They had these really, really tall stems, right? And then the plume at the very top, but they were like really, really tall and really high. And then the plume was much smaller than like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki videos or images you may have seen. And I woke up, but I remember thinking, that's weird. I've never seen an image of an atomic bomb like that before, where the pillar was just super tall and the plume was so small. And I've got a friend who who's got a lot of military background, and he has family members who served in the military, and so he ends up hearing things and blah blah blah. You kind of fill the blank in. And I called him and I said, "Hey, this is the dream that I had. Have you ever heard of these before?" He's like, "Oh yeah." So those are called the cluster rockets. So they typically launch those from submarines. They're rockets they're long rockets, and they have heads that have 6 bombs on the fronts of them. They'll shoot them out. They go up to altitude, and when they get to altitude, the bombs release, and then each of them is satellite guided, GPS guided to its target. So it gets it up to altitude, and then they fall individually. So I thought about that dream as I'm reading this. There was a star that fell from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. And if you think about that, what does a lamp look like? Well, this lamp is going to be a long kind of a strip with fire at the back of it. That's what a lamp's going to look like, right? So if you imagine what he's using, I mean, John would have never seen a rocket, would have never known what a rocket looks like, would never have even been able to dream what it looks like. He's going to say, wow, there's a lamp, because what is it? He sees something long, he's got fire on one end. It's a lamp. I think that this is an atomic issue, and we're going to see more in just a minute why I think that's also the case too. But we'll keep going here.
Hey, Bud.
Yeah.
It's Carl. Yesterday I was talking to a friend of mine, and we got to talking, and he said the way to really cripple the U.S. is to bomb the bridges on the Mississippi River. And there's only about 6 or 8 of them that are of any consequence.
Right. Yeah.
That's weird.
Yeah. And if you think about, I mean, the Mississippi River is a huge thoroughfare for our shipping still. I mean, we use the Mississippi just all the time. So it would be a pretty amazing way for somebody to divide the east and west sides of the United States. If you were to destroy the Mississippi River, you wouldn't be able, I mean, for 20 miles either direction of it, you couldn't get there because it would be because of the radiation, number one. So in essence, everybody that would be east of the Mississippi would have to fend for themselves. Everybody west of the Mississippi would have to fend for themselves. Certainly those on the west side of the Mississippi would have it better than those on the east side, because there'd be much less food on the east side than the west side. But anyway, thanks, Carl, for sharing that. So yeah, I look at it and I think that's kind of interesting, because maybe what we're seeing here, if you're thinking about this lamp, you'd have this, you have basically something that looks like this with fire coming out the back of it, and it's coming like that, right? And then it splits out and falls as individual rockets, destroying rivers and whatnot of the earth, right? The other thing about this verse is it says wormwood, just something for the old timers on the call here. Many of you may or may not remember the Chernobyl incident that happened in the 80s. And I think it was like 82, maybe something like that. But the word Chernobyl is actually can be translated. It's not always translated, but it can be translated as wormwood. So the word Chernobyl is a plant, and it's a plant of this genus and species, and it is sometimes translated as wormwood. So just another nuclear reference for the sake of it. For those of you that aren't familiar with Chernobyl, you just have to Google it. There was a nuclear reactor core that melted down, spewed all sorts of steam out into the communities around and the water table. And to this day, people cannot live in that area because the radiation is just too high. So, and that was 30 some years ago. Verse 12. The fourth thing, so anyways, when you see bitter, it says that the third part of the waters became wormwood, and that many died of the waters because they were made bitter. I think that could be saying that they were polluted by nuclear waste, and that they died by drinking the water. The fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, the third part of the moon, the third part of the stars, so that the third part of them was darkened, and the day did not shine for a third part of it, and the night likewise. So we only have one. We have to think this through for just a second here. This cannot mean that a third part of the sun was gone, like taking a bite out of an Oreo cookie, right? Because that wouldn't make a third part of the day. It would make the sun dimmer for the entire time, right? Are you following? So the only way that this works, because he said that the third part of the sun was smitten, the third part of the moon, the third part of the stars. It can't be that a third part of them quits shining, because that just makes them dimmer, not shine less, not shine fewer hours. The only way that something can shine fewer hours is if the horizon is elevated. So you can imagine, here's the horizon, right? And I can see to the right and to the left, and I can see everything. So I can see 180 degrees. What happens if my horizon is now up to here? What happens? Well, if I look right to left, I can't see what I saw before. I have to look up and over to see things. So by taking, I don't know what the degree is, but let's just say somewhere between 20 and 30% of the horizon, elevating it, right? It'd be like putting one of those cones on your dog so he doesn't chew on himself, right? He can't see everything. Now all of a sudden his vision is like this. So the sun is coming up over here. I can't see it, can't see it, can't see it. Oh, now I see it. So I used to be able to see it here, right? I used to see it here, but because the horizon is bigger, now I can't see it till it gets here. I end up losing a third part of the day, the night, and the stars because the horizon is elevated and I can't see the sky because there's less to see, right? So this speaks to what would elevate the horizon to stop the sun, moon, and stars from being visible. It would have to be smoke, debris, right? If you have nuclear attack, if you have smoke burning all around, those of us that live in the Midwest are familiar with this phenomenon. I don't know, maybe some of you that live in larger cities may experience this because of smog alerts, but at the end of harvest, when the guys are burning their fields, the horizon elevates, and you watch the sun as it sets, and it sets behind the smoke. And so, you've got this much layer in the horizon from all the fields that are burning, so they can burn them off and till them under for the next year. And you don't see the sun, and the sun sets into the smoke, not into the horizon. So that, I believe, is indeed what's happening here. So likely what we've seen is numbers of fires, explosions, debris in the sky that's elevated the horizon. And if you remember from reading your Day of the Lord scriptures, you saw a lot about fires in there. So anybody thoughts or questions before we go to verse 13? Nope. Okay. So verse 13. And I beheld an angel flying in the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpets of the three angels which are yet to sound. You guys want to go into chapter 9, or do you want to save it for next week? You guys tell me. It's 7:14 right now. Have you had enough?
Hold on.
Oh, yeah, I don't mind. We can keep going. Of course, that's
How long?
me.
How long?
Okay. It'll take us probably 20 minutes, 25 minutes maybe to get through this chapter. You guys just want to put it off until next week?
I'm good either way.
I tell you what, let's do this. Let's stop. We'll come back next week. You guys go ahead and you can read it if you want to, obviously, but we'll finish the trumpets next week. And then that'll give us the ability to do chapter 10 and chapter 11, which is a great place for us to end next week. So let's do that. We'll stop this week. And so far where we're landing today then is that we just finished the fourth angel. We've got the fifth, sixth, and seventh angels left. And spoiler, I'll give you this as a closing thought here. Currently, as it sits, I believe that the fifth, sixth, and seventh trumpets and the fifth, sixth, and seventh vials of God's wrath happen like on top of each other. And if you want to go read them just for fun this week, so you can see what I'm talking about, notice the parallels between the fifth trumpet and the fifth vial, the sixth trumpet, the sixth vial, the seventh trumpet, the seventh vial. Look at how closely they relate to each other. They're almost like cause and effect. So when we talk about them next week, when we get back, we'll talk a little bit more about how I think the timing is happening. I can say that I believe with almost certainty at this point, and I haven't had anything that's shaken this yet, that the trumpets and the vials definitely happen very close to each other, and that at least the last three are shared. I really do believe that the last three happen at the same time. So if you are of the mindset that the revelation is linear, it really isn't. It really isn't, and it doesn't appear to be anyways. I'll just say it that way. If it is linear, I'll be surprised and I'll go, well, okay, well, there you go. But it sure doesn't look to be linear. I'll just say that. So anyways, go check out. You can read the rest of the trumpets in preparation for next week. And then if you want to go look at the fifth, sixth, and seventh trumpet and the fifth, sixth, and seventh vial and look at them to see the similarities, just, it won't take long, probably 15 minutes. You can probably read the two and get the sense of it. So does anybody have thoughts or questions or anything before we close for the day?
I would just say chapter 9, 11, 9 verse 11, just read it and think about it.
Chapter 9 verse.
Yep. That's all I'm going to suggest. Just think about it. We'll talk about it.
Sorry, guys, I lost you.
It's okay. We didn't lose you. We can hear you. I'm just saying, no, it's cool. I'm just saying, read 9:11 and then think about the world we live in and think about those words. All right. I don't want to put any thought in anyone's head. I just want them to.
Yeah, no, that's good. Anybody else?
No, I'm good.
We'll when we get back next week, we'll go through chapter 9. We're going to talk about the beast, because this is where the beast comes in, right? And so this is pretty fresh in my mind. This is the book that I just finished, right? So I spent the last May, June, July, August, September, October, November, the last 7 months just working on Revelation 9 and the stuff that revolves around chapter 9. And so there's some fun stuff in chapter 9. There is.
Okay, Buck.
Yeah.
Buck, what is the name of your book?
No, it's the volume 2. It's the same one. I have some at the house. They're on Amazon too, but it's the End Times Handbook, volume 2, the Beast. Volume 1 was Matthew 24 and Matthew 25, and volume 2 is the Beast. I'm sorry?
Dylan was showing it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Dylan.
I got a copy of it over here.
And I say I have some at the house. But anyways, we'll go through this in detail. This part here, chapter 9, when we get there, is really where we'll start to see the angelic begin to interact with humanity. We've seen angels of heaven interacting like in a cause and effect way, right? Like they cast something to the earth, or they open the incense, things like that. But when we get to Revelation 9, we'll actually start to begin the process of observing the demonic interacting with humanity, which is kind of an interesting thing because we haven't really seen that to this point, but we will next week. All right. Anybody else? Anything? Thoughts or questions or anything before we're done?
No, don't
No?
do that.
Thanks
All
so
right.
much. Good
Thank you
stuff.
all.
Yeah.
See ya.
You guys next week.
God
Happy
bless you guys.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Buck. Thank you.
Yep.
Have a
Happy
good
Thanksgiving, everybody. Yes, you
Have
too.
fun.
Bye.
Have fun in Nashville.
Yeah, thanks, Bud.
And you can hit leave.
See you guys in Guthrie. Happy Thanksgiving.
Everybody, hi.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Tell everybody
Yeah, I will. Love you guys.
Bye.
See ya.
I'm sure he knew it was you. That's weird, Sarah.
Freaks me out. Hey, you guys, you have a second? Can I take you out and let the family say hi to you real quick?
I thought I moved over to another new video.
I was like, what happened?
I was like, oh, we're starting a video.
Hey, welcome back to week 17.
Sit over here, Sarah.
Getting our picture.
Yeah.
Hello.
What's up?
The Colonel.
The Colonel.
Hi, Pebbles.
Little guy.
Hey. How are you guys? Good to see you.
You too.
Happy Thanksgiving, you guys.
You
You too.
All right. See you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
You want to get